The moment Clara's lips brushed Walter's chest, she felt the familiar rush of guilt and adrenaline. It was a dangerous game they were playing, and she knew it. But as Walter's hands gripped her shoulders, pulling her closer, she pushed the thought aside. For now, she was lost in the heat of the moment, her heart pounding as she whispered, "I need you now." Walter didn't hesitate. Within minutes, they were tangled in the sheets, their breaths uneven, their bodies still warm. But as the haze of passion faded, Clara's unease returned. She sat up, her voice trembling. "We can't keep doing this," she said, her eyes avoiding his. Walter chuckled, his cocky grin only fueling her anxiety. "You said the same thing last week," he reminded her. "But we both know you can't resist." She glanced at the clock. Arthur would be home soon. "He's been acting differently," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "More observant. And Eleanor's been calling you non-stop. What if she finds out?" Walter's grin faded, replaced by a flicker of concern. "We'll lay low for a while," he said, though his tone lacked conviction. "Just until things settle down." But Clara wasn't convinced. As she dressed and slipped out the door, her mind raced. She couldn't afford to lose Arthur, not after 25 years of marriage, not after everything they'd built together. Yet, the thrill of her affair with Walter was intoxicating, and she wasn't sure she could let it go. Meanwhile, across town, Arthur Winters sat in his office, his jaw clenched so tightly it ached. The shattered remains of his laptop lay scattered across the floor, a testament to the rage boiling inside him. He had trusted Clara, trusted her with his life, his heart, his family. But now, that trust was shattered. "That bastard Walter is going to pay," he muttered, his voice low and dangerous. "If I ever get my hands on him, he'll regret every second of this." A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. His assistant, Sally, peered inside, her eyes wide with concern. "Sir, is everything all right?" Arthur forced a smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm fine," he said, running a hand through his hair. "Just arrange for a new laptop. I'm done with that one." Without another word, he grabbed his coat and stormed out of the office, his mind racing. He needed answers, and he needed them now. 3 days earlier, Arthur's world had been turned upside down. Eleanor Finch, Walter's wife, had come to see him, her hands trembling as she sat across from him in his office. "Arthur," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "I believe my husband is having an affair with your wife." The words hit Arthur like a punch to the gut. He had trusted Clara completely, never once suspecting her of betrayal. But as Eleanor laid out her evidence, Walter's unexplained absences, the tracking app that placed him at Arthur's house in the middle of the workday, Arthur felt the ground beneath him shift. "I checked the address," Eleanor said, her voice breaking. "It was your house, Arthur." Arthur's stomach churned as he recalled the small, seemingly insignificant changes in Clara's behavior. The way she had stopped wearing underwear beneath her dresses, laughing it off as a personal preference. At the time, he hadn't thought much of it. But now, it felt like a glaring red flag. As he left the office that day, Arthur's mind was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, betrayal, and a burning desire for revenge. He didn't know how far he was willing to go to uncover the truth, but one thing was certain: he wouldn't rest until he had answers. And as he stepped into the cool evening air, a chilling thought crossed his mind. What if the truth was worse than he imagined? Eleanor's voice trembled as she leaned forward, her hands gripping the edge of the sofa. "Arthur, there's more. The app tracks location history for up to 3 months. I went back and checked Walter's movements. Every Wednesday for the past 3 weeks, he left his office at 10 a.m., drove to your house, and stayed until around 1:10 p.m. Then he'd return to work like nothing happened." "And you're sure it was my house?" She nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I looked up the address. It's yours. When I asked Walter why he hadn't answered my calls, he lied and said he was with a client. But I knew better." I clenched my fists, my mind racing. What did you do after that? Eleanor wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. I checked our home security system. It showed Clara deactivating the alarms at 11:15 a.m. and reactivating them at 1:10 p.m. on those same Wednesdays. It all matched, except for 3 weeks ago. That day, the system wasn't touched. The room felt suffocating. I paced back and forth, my thoughts a chaotic storm. So, what are you saying? That they've been meeting at my house every week? That my wife has been lying to me, sneaking around with your husband under my roof? Eleanor's silence was all the confirmation I needed. Without another word, I grabbed my phone and dialed Harold, my trusted security contractor. Harold, it's Arthur. I need your help. Urgently. Can you come to my office? 10 minutes later, Harold arrived, his expression grim as I explained the situation. Arthur, are you sure you want to do this? He asked, his voice low. Once you see what's on those cameras, there's no going back. I glanced at Eleanor, who nodded firmly. We need the truth, I said. No matter how ugly it is. Harold laid out the plan. Your current cameras only record when the system's armed, so they're useless for this. I'll install hidden high-definition cameras in key areas. Master bedroom, guest bedroom, living room. They'll capture both video and audio, day or night. I'll also set up a receiver in the attic so you can monitor everything remotely. The footage will be stored in the cloud for safekeeping. Do it, I said without hesitation. The next few days were a blur. I buried myself in work, avoiding Clara as much as possible. She seemed oblivious, kissing me goodbye each morning like nothing was wrong. But I noticed the subtle changes, the way she'd become more confident, almost daring, in the bedroom. At first, I'd welcomed it, but now it felt like a cruel joke. Wednesday arrived, and I watched Clara leave for work, her smile as bright as ever. My stomach churned as I thought about what might be happening behind my back. That evening, I sat in my home office, staring at the footage Harold had sent. My hands shook as I clicked play. The video was crystal clear. Clara and Walter, tangled in the sheets of our bed, their laughter echoing through the room. My chest tightened, my vision blurring with rage. I forwarded the footage to Eleanor, then called my lawyer, Roger. It's over, I said, my voice cold. Start drafting the divorce papers. Adultery. I want this done as fast as possible. Roger assured me he'd handle it. In our state, adultery cases can be expedited. You could be free in a few months. Next, I called Ted Jackson, an old friend and regional VP at the bank where Clara and Walter worked. Ted, I need a favor. Look into any inappropriate relationships between two employees, specifically during work hours. Discreetly. Ted didn't ask questions. Consider it done. As I hung up, a strange sense of determination washed over me. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity. But as I sat there, staring at the frozen image of Clara and Walter on my screen, a chilling thought crossed my mind. What if this was only the beginning? The siren wailed, a discordant shriek that tore through the pre-dawn stillness, shattering the fragile peace I'd managed to cobble together. Not a police siren, not an ambulance, but the unmistakable, bone-chilling wail of a civil defense alarm. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence that followed the alarm's abrupt cessation. Had I misheard? Was it a malfunction? No. The unnerving silence that draped the city was a testament to its reality. Something was terribly wrong. I bolted upright in bed, my senses on high alert, adrenaline surging through my veins. My hand instinctively reached for the phone on the nightstand. 3:15 a.m. Too early for anything normal. I scrolled through the news apps, but there was nothing. No breaking news. No emergency alerts. Just the cold, blank stare of a screen. I tried calling Beatrice, then Theodore, then Philip. No answer. They were probably asleep, blissfully unaware. Or, a chilling thought crept in, perhaps they were already involved in whatever chaos was unfolding. A sudden sharp knock on the door jolted me from my dark thoughts. I cautiously approached the peephole, my breath catching in my throat. It was Eleanor, her face etched with a mixture of fear and urgency. I flung the door open. "Arthur, you need to see this," she said, her voice trembling slightly. She thrust her phone into my hand. The video playing was grainy, shaky, but the image was unmistakable. A plume of smoke, thick and black, billowing from the direction of the city's power plant. Then, a flash, a blinding white light, followed by the muffled thump of an explosion. What is that?" I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. "I don't know, but it's not good," Eleanor replied, her eyes wide with fear. "My brother works at the hospital downtown. He called me. He said there's a mass casualty event unfolding. They're overwhelmed." My mind raced, trying to process the information. A mass casualty event? An explosion? Was it an accident? Or something far more sinister? I grabbed my keys and phone, my movements driven by a primal instinct to protect my children. "We need to get to them," I said, my voice firm despite the tremor in my hands. "We need to find Beatrice, Theodore, and Philip." We rushed out of the apartment, the silence in the hallway amplifying the dread that clung to the air. The elevator seemed to take an eternity, each floor a painful crawl toward the unknown. When the doors finally slid open, we found the lobby in chaos. Residents, their faces pale and drawn, were huddled together, their voices a low murmur of fear. "Did you hear the explosion?" a woman asked, her eyes searching our faces for answers. "We saw the smoke," Eleanor replied, her voice calm despite the panic swirling within her. "Do you know what happened?" "No one knows," the woman said, shaking her head. "But they're saying it came from the power plant. Some kind of accident, they think." Accident. The word felt hollow, a flimsy attempt to explain something far more ominous. We pushed through the crowd, heading for the garage. The city streets were eerily empty, the usual hum of traffic replaced by an unsettling silence. The air was thick with tension, the silence punctuated by the distant wail of sirens. As we drove, my phone buzzed with a text from Beatrice. "Dad, what's happening? I'm scared. Mom's gone. Can't reach her. Please call." My heart pounded in my chest. Clara was gone. Where? And what was she involved in? I quickly typed a response. "Stay where you are. I'm coming to get you. Are Theodore and Philip with you?" "No, they're at their apartments." "I'm at home," she replied. I called Theodore. No answer. Then Philip. Still no answer. I felt a cold dread creeping up my spine. Had they been caught in the explosion? Were they injured? Or worse? We reached Beatrice's apartment building, a high-rise in the heart of the city. The lobby was deserted, the security guard's desk empty. We took the elevator to her floor, the silence broken only by the hum of the machine. Beatrice opened the door, her face pale and drawn. She rushed into my arms, her body shaking. "Dad, I'm so scared," she sobbed. "What's happening?" "I don't know, baby," I said, holding her tight. "But we're going to find out. We need to get Theodore and Philip." We left Beatrice's apartment, the three of us huddled together, a small island of fear in a sea of uncertainty. We drove to Theodore's apartment, a small, cramped space in a student housing complex. The door was ajar, the apartment empty. We called his name, but there was no response. "He's gone," Beatrice said, her voice trembling. "Where could he be?" We rushed to Philip's apartment, a similar space in a different part of the city. The door was locked. We knocked, but there was no answer. I kicked the door in, the sound echoing through the empty hallway. The apartment was a mess, clothes scattered across the floor, furniture overturned. It looked like someone had ransacked the place. "Something's wrong," I said, my voice grim. "They're gone. Both of them. Where could they be?" Beatrice asked, her eyes filled with fear. I don't know, I replied, my mind racing. But we're going to find them. We need to get out of here. This isn't safe. We returned to the car, the city now a scene of chaos. Sirens wailed, smoke billowed from buildings, and people ran through the streets, their faces etched with fear. We drove to the outskirts of the city, seeking refuge in a small town where I had a friend with a secluded cabin. As we drove, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Arthur, a voice said, low and menacing. We have your sons. My blood ran cold. Who is this? What do you want? We want you to come alone. No police. No tricks. Come to the old warehouse on the waterfront. If you want to see your sons alive, you'll do as we say. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my hand shaking. My sons were in danger. And they wanted me. Alone. Dad, who was that? Beatrice asked, her voice trembling. They have Theodore and Philip, I said, my voice grim. They want me to come alone. No, Dad, you can't go, Beatrice said, her eyes filled with fear. It's a trap. I have to go, I said, my voice firm. They're my sons. I can't leave them. We're going with you, Eleanor said, her voice resolute. We're not letting you go alone. I looked at them, my heart filled with a mixture of fear and gratitude. We were a team, bound together by fear and love. We would face this together. We reached the old warehouse, a dilapidated structure on the edge of the waterfront. The air was thick with the smell of salt and decay. I parked the car, my hands gripping the steering wheel. Stay here, I said, my voice low. If I don't come back, call the police. I stepped out of the car, my heart pounding in my chest. I approached the warehouse, the silence broken only by the sound of my footsteps. I pushed open the heavy door, the darkness swallowing me whole. And then I saw them. My sons, tied to chairs, their faces pale and bruised. And standing behind them, Clara, her eyes cold and hard. The metallic tang of blood filled my nostrils, a stark contrast to the musty, decaying air of the warehouse. Clara stood before me, her eyes devoid of warmth, a chilling mask of cold determination. My sons, Theodore and Philip, were bound and gagged, their faces bruised and swollen. The scene was a grotesque tableau, a nightmare made flesh. Clara, I said, my voice low and dangerous. What have you done? What I had to do, Arthur, she replied, her voice flat. You left me no choice. No choice? You kidnapped our sons. I exploded, my rage threatening to consume me. They're pawns, Arthur, she said, her eyes flicking towards Theodore and Philip. Collateral. To ensure your cooperation. Cooperation with what? I demanded, my eyes narrowed. With what's coming, she said, a hint of something akin to fear flickering across her face. Something inevitable. Suddenly, the warehouse doors burst open, and a group of heavily armed men stormed in. They were dressed in black tactical gear, their faces hidden behind masks. They moved with a practiced precision, their weapons trained on me. Take him, Clara commanded, her voice sharp. The men surged forward, their movements swift and brutal. I fought back, my years of training kicking in, but I was outnumbered and outgunned. They overpowered me, binding my hands and forcing me to my knees. What is this, Clara? I asked, my voice strained. What are you involved in? Something bigger than you can imagine, Arthur, she said, her eyes gleaming with a strange intensity. Something that will change everything. They dragged me from the warehouse, forcing me into a black van. The doors slammed shut, plunging me into darkness. The van lurched forward, and I felt a surge of adrenaline. I had to escape. I had to save my sons. The van sped through the city streets, the sirens wailing in the distance. We stopped abruptly, and the doors slid open. I was pulled out, my eyes adjusting to the dim light. We were in an underground parking garage, the air thick with the smell of exhaust fumes. They led me to a private elevator, and we descended deep beneath the city. The doors opened into a brightly lit corridor, lined with steel doors. We stopped in front of one of the doors, and they pushed me inside. The room was sterile and white, with a single metal table in the center. Clara sat at the table, her posture rigid. "Welcome, Arthur," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. "Welcome to the future. What is this place?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "This is where the future is made," she said, her eyes gleaming. "Where we shape the world to come." "You're insane," I said, my voice filled with disgust. "Am I?" she asked, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Or am I the only one who sees the truth?" She gestured to a large screen on the wall. It flickered to life, displaying a series of images. Explosions, riots, chaos. "The world is on the brink of collapse, Arthur," she said. "The old order is dying. We are here to usher in the new." "What new order?" I asked, my voice filled with dread. "An order of control," she said. "An order of stability. An order of perfection." "Perfection," I scoffed. "You call this perfection?" "It will be," she said, her voice firm. "We have the means to control the chaos, to eliminate the variables, to create a world where everyone is safe, secure, and compliant." "Compliant," I repeated, my blood running cold. "Yes," she said. "We have developed a technology that allows us to influence human behavior, to eliminate dissent, to ensure obedience." "You're talking about mind control," I said, my voice filled with horror. "A crude term," she said. "We prefer to call it cognitive harmonization." "And you're going to use this on everyone?" I asked. "On those who are deemed necessary," she said. "Those who pose a threat to the new order." "And what about my sons?" I asked, my voice trembling. "They are collateral," she said. "Their fate depends on your cooperation." "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice filled with despair. "We need your access codes," she said. "Your company's security protocols. Your knowledge of the city's infrastructure." "I won't help you," I said, my voice firm. "You will," she said, her voice cold. "Or your sons will suffer the consequences." She gestured to the screen, and it displayed images of Theodore and Philip, their faces bruised and bleeding. "You wouldn't," I said, my voice filled with disbelief. "Try me," she said, her eyes hard. I stared at her, my mind reeling. She had changed. She was no longer the woman I had known. She was a monster. "You've lost your mind, Clara," I said, my voice filled with disgust. "I've found my purpose, Arthur," she said. "And you will help me achieve it." Suddenly, the door burst open, and Eleanor rushed in, her eyes wide with fear. "Arthur!" she cried. "They're coming!" Before I could react, the room was filled with armed men. They grabbed me, dragging me from the room. "Where are you taking me?" I demanded. "To where you belong," Clara said, her voice echoing down the corridor. "To the future." They forced me into another elevator, and we ascended rapidly. The doors opened into a large, brightly lit room. In the center of the room was a massive machine, its intricate components humming with power. "What is this?" I asked, my voice trembling. "This is the cognitive harmonizer," Clara said, her voice filled with pride. "This is where we reshape the human mind." They strapped me to a chair, and a helmet descended over my head. I felt a surge of energy, a tingling sensation that spread through my body. "What are you doing?" I cried, my voice filled with panic. "Harmonizing you, Arthur," Clara said, her voice cold. "Making you compliant." The machine hummed, and I felt a wave of dizziness. My mind began to blur, my thoughts dissolving into a swirling vortex. "No!" I whispered, my voice fading. "No!" The world dissolved into darkness. And then, there was nothing. The world snapped back into focus, a jarring collision of senses. My body throbbed, a dull ache that radiated from every muscle. The metallic taste of blood lingered on my tongue. My head pounded, a relentless drumbeat that echoed the frantic rhythm of my heart. I was no longer strapped to the chair. The harmonizer was silent, its humming power replaced by an eerie stillness. I was lying on the cold, steel floor of the room. I struggled to sit up, my limbs heavy and unresponsive. My vision swam, the sterile white walls of the room blurring and shifting. I blinked, trying to clear the fog that clouded my mind. What had they done to me? What had Clara done? A wave of nausea washed over me, and I staggered to my feet, my legs wobbling beneath me. I stumbled towards the door, my hand reaching for the handle. It was unlocked. I pushed it open, stepping into the dimly lit corridor. The silence was unsettling, broken only by the faint hum of machinery in the distance. The corridor was deserted, the armed guards nowhere to be seen. I moved cautiously, my senses on high alert, my body screaming for clarity. I reached the elevator, the doors sliding open at my touch. I pressed the button for the parking garage, the elevator descending rapidly. As the doors opened, I stepped into the dim, cavernous space. The van was gone. The garage was empty. I was alone. I stumbled out of the garage, into the cool night air. The city was eerily quiet, the usual hum of traffic replaced by an unsettling stillness. The streetlights flickered, casting long, distorted shadows. I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling. The screen was blank. No signal. I started walking, my footsteps echoing in the deserted streets. I had to find my sons. I had to find Eleanor. I had to find Clara, and make her pay. As I walked, my mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of what had happened. The harmonizer. The cognitive harmonization. Mind control. They were trying to control people. To create a world of obedience. But why? What was their ultimate goal? And what had they done to me? I reached my apartment building, the lobby deserted. I took the elevator to my floor, the silence broken only by the hum of the machine. My apartment door was ajar. I pushed it open, stepping into the darkness. I flipped on the light switch, the sudden brightness stinging my eyes. The apartment was a mess. Furniture overturned, drawers pulled out, papers scattered across the floor. It looked like someone had ransacked the place. I moved through the apartment, my senses on high alert. I found my phone, lying on the floor, the screen shattered. I picked it up, trying to turn it on, but it was dead. I searched the apartment, looking for anything that could give me a clue. A weapon. A message. Anything. I found a small metallic device hidden beneath a loose floorboard. It was sleek and black, with a single button on its surface. I pressed the button, and a holographic image flickered to life. It was a map of the city, with a series of red dots scattered across the screen. Each dot pulsed, emitting a faint, high-pitched hum. I recognized the dots. They were the locations of the city's power plants, water treatment facilities, communication hubs. The city's infrastructure. And they were all pulsing with the same energy signature. The energy signature of the harmonizer. They were using the infrastructure to amplify the signal, to spread their influence. I had to stop them. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen, slipping it into my pocket. I left the apartment, heading back into the deserted streets. I moved through the city, following the pulsing red dots on the holographic map. I reached the first location, a power plant on the outskirts of the city. The gates were unguarded, the security cameras dark. I slipped through the gates, moving through the deserted facility. I found the control room, the computers humming with power. The screens displayed a series of complex data streams, the energy signature of the harmonizer pulsing through the network. I found the main control panel, the central hub of the harmonizer's signal. I pulled out the knife, plunging it into the control panel, short-circuiting the system. The screens flickered, the humming power dying away. The red on the holographic map vanished. I moved to the next location, a water treatment facility in the heart of the city. The gates were guarded, but I managed to slip past the guards, moving through the facility. I found the control room, the computers humming with power. I repeated my actions, plunging the knife into the control panel, short-circuiting the system. The screens flickered, the humming power dying away. The red on the holographic map vanished. I moved to the next location, a communication hub on the top of a skyscraper. The security was tight, but I managed to bypass the guards, reaching the control room. I repeated my actions, short-circuiting the system. The red dot vanished. I moved through the city, systematically disabling each location, each red dot vanishing from the holographic map. As I moved, I felt a strange sensation, a tingling in my mind. The effects of the harmonizer were fading, my thoughts clearing, my senses sharpening. I reached the final location, the central hub of the harmonizer's network, located deep beneath the city. The security was impenetrable, a fortress of armed guards and advanced technology. But I had to get through. I moved through the facility, using my skills and training to bypass the security systems, to evade the guards. I reached the central control room, the heart of the harmonizer's network. Clara stood in the center of the room, her eyes glowing with a strange intensity. "You can't stop us, Arthur," she said, her voice echoing through the room. "We are the future." "You're insane, Clara," I said, my voice filled with disgust. "We are the saviors," she said. "We will bring order to the chaos." "You're creating chaos," I said. "You're taking away people's free will." "Free will is an illusion," she said. "We are all slaves to our impulses, our desires." "You're wrong," I said. "We have the power to choose." "Then choose, Arthur," she said, her eyes gleaming. "Choose to join us." "I'll never join you," I said. "Then you will be eliminated," she said. She raised her hand, and the room filled with armed guards. They surged forward, their weapons trained on me. I fought back, my movements swift and brutal. I used my skills and training to disable the guards, to evade their attacks. But they were too many. I was outnumbered, outgunned. I was cornered, my back against the wall. Clara smiled, a cold, cruel smile. "It's over, Arthur," she said. Suddenly, the lights flickered, the humming power dying away. The guards froze, their eyes blank, their movements robotic. Eleanor stepped into the room, her eyes filled with determination. "It's not over, Clara," she said. "It's just beginning." The cold steel of the gun pressed against my temple, a chilling reminder of mortality. Clara's eyes, once warm and familiar, now burned with a fanatical intensity. "It's over, Arthur," she hissed, her voice a venomous whisper. "Join us, or die." But it wasn't over. Not yet. "You think this is control, Clara?" I spat, my voice hoarse. "This is madness. You've lost yourself." "I've found myself," she retorted, her finger tightening on the trigger. "And you will be the first to witness the dawn of a new era." Suddenly, a surge of energy pulsed through the room, the lights flickering wildly. The guards, their movements robotic and vacant, began to twitch and convulse. Eleanor stood behind them, a small device in her hand, its surface glowing with an eerie blue light. "I told you, Clara," Eleanor said, her voice steady. "It's just beginning." She pressed a button on the device, and a high-pitched frequency filled the air. The guards collapsed, their bodies hitting the floor with a dull thud. Clara's eyes widened in disbelief. "What have you done?" she screamed, her voice filled with rage. "I've neutralized your puppets," Eleanor replied, her eyes flashing. "And now it's your turn." Clara turned her gun on Eleanor, but I lunged forward, knocking her off balance. The gun discharged, the bullet ricocheting off the steel wall. Clara stumbled, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and fury. "You can't stop me!" she shrieked, scrambling to her feet. "This is bigger than you. Bigger than all of us." "It's not bigger than my sons," I growled, my voice filled with a primal rage. "Or my family." I moved towards her, my movements swift and precise. Clara backed away, her eyes darting around the room, searching for an escape. "You don't understand," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "They're going to change the world. They're going to make it better. They're taking away people's choices," I retorted. "They're turning them into slaves." "Slaves to order," she corrected, her voice rising. "Slaves to peace. Slaves to a world without chaos." "There is no peace without freedom," I said, my voice firm. "And there is no order without choice." Clara lunged at me, her fingers outstretched, her eyes filled with a desperate fury. I sidestepped her attack, grabbing her arm and twisting it behind her back. "It's over, Clara," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "You've lost." She struggled against my grip, her body writhing and contorting. "You'll never understand," she hissed. "You'll all be sorry." Suddenly, the room began to shake, the walls trembling. The humming of the harmonizer grew louder, its power surging. "What's happening?" Eleanor asked, her voice filled with alarm. "They're overloading the system," Clara gasped, her eyes wide with a manic glee. "If I can't have it, no one can." The harmonizer pulsed with an intense energy, the air crackling with electricity. The walls began to glow, the steel vibrating with a dangerous intensity. "We have to get out of here," I shouted, pulling Eleanor towards the door. We dragged Clara with us, her body limp and unresponsive. We reached the elevator, the doors sliding open just as the room behind us exploded in a blinding flash of light. The elevator lurched upwards, the building shaking violently. We reached the parking garage, the air thick with smoke and dust. We stumbled out of the garage, into the chaos of the city. Sirens wailed, buildings crumbled, and the sky glowed with an eerie orange light. The harmonizer had overloaded, its power surging through the city's infrastructure, causing widespread destruction. "We have to find Theodore and Philip," I said, my voice filled with urgency. We moved through the chaos, searching for my sons. We found them huddled together in a shelter, their faces pale and drawn. "Dad!" they cried, rushing into my arms. "You're safe now," I said, holding them tight. "We're all safe." But we weren't. The city was in ruins, the streets filled with fear and despair. The harmonizer's influence had spread, its effects lingering in the minds of the people. We had stopped Clara, but we hadn't stopped the harmonizer. Its legacy remained, a dark stain on the city's soul. We had to rebuild. We had to restore order. We had to find a way to heal the minds of the people. We had to find a way to live with the consequences of Clara's madness. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The city slowly began to recover, the rubble cleared, the buildings rebuilt. But the scars remained, etched into the minds of the people, a constant reminder of the day the world almost ended. Eleanor and I worked tirelessly, helping to rebuild the city, to heal the minds of the people. We established a foundation, providing counseling and support to those affected by the harmonizer's influence. We worked to dismantle the remnants of Clara's network, to expose the truth about her organization, to prevent them from ever rising again. We worked to create a world where people were free to choose, where their minds were their own. But the work was never truly finished. The threat of control, the temptation of power, always lingered in the shadows. We had to remain vigilant, to protect the freedom we had fought so hard to regain. And we had to remember the lessons we had learned, the sacrifices we had made, the price we had paid. We had to remember Clara, not as a monster, but as a warning. A warning of what could happen when the desire for control consumed the soul. We had to remember her not with hatred, but with a somber understanding. And we had to remember her with a quiet hope, that one day we could all find peace, not in control, but in freedom.